I am still currently learning Spanish, by the way. I'm not all of a sudden fluent like how a lot of these people say. I studied this language for 3 months and now I'm fluent in the language. This is what I did because I haven't really spent the time, like only the time, of just sitting down and only trying to learn the language. I've been trying to do other stuff in the time. And to be honest with you, I know what I'm capable of, and I'm really going to sit down for a period of time and only learn a language. Like that's the thing I'm going to be focusing on. It's just only learning a language. I will tell you that learning a language is probably one of the deepest things that you're probably going to do. If there's something you're doing on your self improvement journey, it's probably one of the deepest, like most meaningful things you're going to do. I'm saying this comparing it with stuff like reading and working out. It's seriously such a deep, meaningful thing. Such a deep practice of essentially connecting with other people and their culture. Go back to me freshman year. I took Spanish 1. I almost failed the class. Like legit, I I almost failed 2 classes in my entire life. And it's funny that Spanish was one of them. But it wasn't because I didn't understand the stuff that we were doing in the class. It was just simply because I was focusing on other stuff I didn't care about. I was focusing on just really bad habits. I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I most of my time went to stuff with her, and I didn't even focus like on my grades. A lot of the and I really I didn't I would have never thought that honestly like learning Spanish is like one of the best things that like I could have ever done. It wasn't until Spanish 2 that I started I broke up with my girlfriend. I was in 10th grade. And by the way, this is before I started working out and doing all these things. I was just in my Spanish 2 class, and then we started learning more about the culture. We started learning more about like just these different people from different countries. It's so beautiful like whenever you learn about someone else's culture in a way like through their own eyes. And it was especially during Spanish 3 and Spanish 4, but Spanish 2 was really where it first started. Whenever you're learning another language, and it doesn't have to be Spanish. It can be German, it can be Arabic. It doesn't matter. It can be any language it is. But for me, it was Spanish. I saw it less of like, we were doing because what I really appreciate about my school, at least where we're at, is that they grade very differently when it comes to language classes than it comes to like every other class that you take. So they have this system where essentially instead of it being like you add up all the grades and then divide it by how many there are, and that's your grade. It's about what's the most prevalent grade. So instead of it being the mean of your grades, it's really just the mode of your grades. It's just a way better way to do it. And it'll be like I think it's like on an eight to 12 scale, and like a 12 is like an 100, and like an eight's like an 80, like something like that. But the point is that they grade it very differently. So a lot of the times when it comes to these assignments, and by the way, a lot of like for all the Spanish classes I've taken, it's been from actual native speakers who have speaking the language who are actually grew up in an environment where that's the only language they speak. So it feels so much more deep and connected. It's almost as though a part of you becomes a part like a part of you becomes that religion, not religion, the culture. I know this sounds like really weird. Like it's gonna be like, why? What is he talking about? But whenever you're learning like all about this culture and like the different terms that they use and how they grow up, it's almost like a part of you becomes that culture. I watched a video of a guy like saying literally the exact same thing, and it's absolutely true. Whenever you're learning these different languages and you're learning about the history, about the legends that they the legends that are spoken around, it's so beautiful because language is the deepest level of connection for human beings. You and you're watching this video, I'm speaking to you in English, and because you and I both speak English, it's almost as though you can actually understand what I'm saying and I can connect with you, as so you can connect with me. Language is the deepest level of connection, and being able to essentially speak with more people can help you connect with more people to see different perspectives. Originally, I just wanted to learn a language just because I they pay more. They pay more. Like, I mean, let's be honest. That's the reason why a lot of people learn more languages is because you get all these scholarships and they pay you more and stuff. But the more I started to learn like Spanish in general, the more I kind of fell in love with the language and the culture. Like, I seriously plan on going to visit countries like Spain or Argentina or Chile. These these cultures that they have are just so beautiful, and it's so different from my own. Because, listen, I'm born in America. I live in South Carolina. The culture here is very different from the culture in countries in South America and in Spain. So my type of advice when it comes to trying to learn a language is stop using the model of like how school wants you to learn a language. That's probably the best way to actually stop. And the best way to do it when it comes to learning a language, it's going to be a lot different from trying to learn how to work out, how trying to learn like all these different self-improvement things. A lot of the times the best way to learn a language is imagine like how did I learn English when I was a young kid? Like, let's think about it. Like, English is honestly a complex language because you have stuff like don't, you have words that are pronounced the exact same that have completely different meanings. Like, oh, I'm bored, and oh, can you go grab that board for me? Like, like stuff like that. English is a very complex language. So you're thinking to yourself, like, how did I learn this stuff? Sometimes I just said one word in a day over and over again until eventually I understood what it means and it just became a part of my vocabulary. That's honestly how some parts is. You're gonna be saying a lot of the same things over and over again, and you're gonna look like a weirdo because you're just walking around saying the same things. Like walking around saying "Cómo estás?" every day. It's That's really like one of the best ways you can actually like understand the language. It's from simply just repeating the same thing. Like, let's think about it. When you were a little kid, you just said the same things over and over again. Your vocabulary was honestly kind of garbage. But eventually, since you kept revolving, you watched TV shows that were in that language. You were reading books, like little kids' books in that language. Your entire family around you was speaking it. So, really, the best way to learn it, and this is whether you're a little kid or you're an adult, is just full immersion. One day, I'm gonna be seriously taking Spanish like seriously, like, but I'm working on other things right now. That's the thing. I'm not trying to make this an excuse. It's just when it comes to learning a language, like that requires a massive amount of dedication, a massive amount of time. Right now, I'm just maintaining my own knowledge that I have right now. But I'm already planning a period of time where I'm only going to be speaking the language. I'm only going to be immersing myself in the language, speaking to people who speak the language. I plan on taking that so I can actually, because right now I'm about intermediate low when it comes to like I've taken multiple tests. I mean, I wouldn't say rely on these tests anyways because a lot of the times are a bit biased. I mean, we already understand this. A lot of tests, you and I both understand that the testing system is kind of garbage, and a lot of the time it's biased. Let me tell, but I'm about intermediate low when it comes to like. So that's about conversational, like a bit of conversational. Like if I was to take somebody's order at my job, I'd probably be able to take their order because I work at a fast food place. I'd probably be able to take their order. I don't I don't like to, but whenever I have to, I do, and I do it just fine. Now, like I said, the best way to do it is to you have to kind of you think about it like you have a cup, right? You have a cup of the knowledge that you already have. Now you want to pour the cup and then fill it back up with new knowledge. That's essentially like the best way to look at it. You're trying to learn a different language. If you seriously want to learn, because let me tell you, dude, doing like 15 minutes of Duolingo every single day is not going to help you. Trust me, I know. I studied Duolingo like while I was over the summertime. I studied it for like 4 or 5 months, had a massive streak. So like my friend and I, we were studying it over the course of the year. Duolingo only does so much. If you're just now like you know little to nothing about Spanish, then I would say yeah, Duolingo is a good source to use. But once you kind of get past that, like about mid beginner to advanced beginner, once you start to get there, then I would just say stop using Duolingo because a lot of the times it doesn't help. It helps you understand some words, but it doesn't actually help you form sentences. Like I like to say there's like three different levels of when it comes to your Spanish knowledge, or I guess you could say four. Is just understanding the words, like understanding some words, being able to make some sentences, being able to make complete sentences and while talking to somebody, and then just being fluent. So more likely than not, you and I, if you're somebody who's not fluent in that language, who wasn't a native speaker, we're probably not going to get to this fluent part unless literally you spend years of your life only surrounded by that. That's how some people. That's how they learn languages. You see a lot of these. You see, okay, like let's for instance, let's look at somebody like Ronaldo. Ronaldo, obviously, if you don't know, he's from Portugal, so obviously he speaks Portuguese, and he obviously like that's his native language. But because he spent so much time in England, he became fluent in English. Like I mean, you speak to him like he can speak some pretty damn good English, and even better Spanish. He's really exceptional at these languages. Same thing when it comes to Kobe Bryant. Like Kobe Bryant, he spent a lot of his childhood, like I think it was about 7, 8 years of his childhood living in Italy. So he was just fluent in Italian, and he's also exceptional at Spanish because he spent so much time watching shows in Spanish. When I tell you that like watching TV shows is not terrible for you, if you understand what you're doing it for. Like for instance, there's sometimes where I just watch like shows in Spanish instead of English with Spanish subtitles because it stimulates your brain in a way where it's like you can kind of you just get so much more out of it. I don't like the idea of watching something with English subtitles because I mean I'm just gonna look at the subtitles. If you ever watched anime before, you know what I'm talking about. Where you're watching an anime, but then it's in Japanese, but then it has English subtitles. Like dog, you don't even understand what they're saying. Like dude, I've watched anime for years, and I cannot tell you a single word in Japanese because I kept watching it in English subtitles. I think honestly, if you want to start watching stuff like in another language, that it's really good to to first of all get to a certain level and then start reading the subtitles, and then you'll start to kind of piece together like what they're trying to say. Another thing, there is a lot of apps that like people always like claim as like these exceptional apps. To be honest with you, I use the majority of them. They're okay. To be honest, they're just more so like tools rather than sure like just bulletproof ways to just learn a language. There's a lot. There's Pimsleur, there's Rosetta Stone, there's Duolingo. There's a lot of apps. To be honest with you, majority of them are okay. They're not exceptional. Like there's like Babbel and all these other apps, but a lot of them, the best way to actually just learn another language, and it's gonna be tough because you're gonna feel like a fool, and I do this and I feel like a fool, is to simply just talk to people in the language. I've already told you that start at a certain point. Okay, if you're a beginner who doesn't know anything, then start doing using Duolingo to try and like learn more of the vocabulary, learn different words and stuff. Then you're gonna start trying to make sentences out of it, and then that's when you can start to leave Duolingo, and you can start watching TV shows in Spanish or whatever language it is. Then you're going to, and this is whenever you're getting to about intermediate, because we all know about like the intermediate plateau where like you stay at the same level. So you want to start actually learning. You want to actually start talking to other people. Because let me tell you that if there's anything I struggle with the most, it's literally just listening to somebody else and like have listening to somebody else. Because especially when it comes to Spanish, there's so many different accents and so many different like there's so many different slangs that it can make it kind of difficult to talk to somebody. But whenever you just talk to other people and start to kind of form this consensus of what people are going to say, then this is where your Spanish level is going to massively increase. I've started doing this recently of just talking to people in Spanish, talking to Spanish speakers. Like I have friends who speak Spanish, and it makes it so great to just talk to people in the language. If you can't, then there's plenty of sources online of going online with somebody who speaks the language. There's like this trading system where it's like you teach them something and they teach you something. I can't tell you the specific thing. I haven't used it yet because I have people who actually speak Spanish. But you can just look up like language exchange. That's it's something like that. Where basically like let's say you speak English and you want to practice Spanish, you speak to somebody but they're trying to learn English. So you're basically trading things off. Like you're giving them some English, they give you some Spanish conversations. It's a really brilliant way if you don't have anybody who speaks the language. Another thing, like I said, when you're learning a language, it's really important that you understand that it's a long progress. It's a long, strenuous journey that you're going to be on. A lot of the times, these people who you see online, they're like, "Oh, I learned this language in a month, or I learned this language in 3 months," and like this. A lot of the times, they probably have already started learning the language before. They probably, I really doubt they learned it from absolutely nothing. It's the same thing how you see these transformations on YouTube. It's like, oh, 3 months journey with fitness, and then they go from like being a fat ass to having this six pack. They probably started working out before. They probably had some experience before. They just started taking it seriously for 3 months. I'm not going to guarantee you that you're gonna be studying this language for 3 months and then all of a sudden you're going to be fluent. You're going to be pretty damn good compared to before if you actually take it seriously and immerse yourself in it. But don't fall victim for believing that if it's the 3 months that and you don't reach that level that other people are reaching, that means that you suck. Remember, these people have probably studied this before. They probably learned another language before this. Let me tell you, the more languages that you learn, the easier learning a language is. Because at first, like a lot of the times, like the classes are gonna like teach you like, oh, you gotta focus on the grammar and stuff. Dude, the grammar could come later on. Just learn how to speak to somebody. Learn how to listen to somebody. Those are the biggest things about learning a language. Like I said, I'm only about intermediate to intermediate high, somewhere between there. It's a long progress. It's a long journey, I should say. But it's really worth it. Like being able to understand like stuff like what like people like Messi is saying is really cool. Like man, and honestly, after I'm like when I get a certain point to the Spanish, I'm probably gonna learn Portuguese, because I mean it's just equally as brilliant. I plan to be fluent in like 5 different languages one day, but right now I'm just focusing on these because it's just so fun to start learning languages. So I hope that helped you guys. Remember, it's going to be a long journey. If you have any questions about specific things about learning a language, feel free to just type something in the comment. I'll try to give you my advice about it. That's all I have for you boys.